What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going over the RG35XXSP, which is obviously a clone of the Game Boy Advance. I'm also going to share with you guys what I think the top 3 devices are for playing emulated games. Now this device retails for about $60 to $80 depending on whether or not you want to get a memory card and where you order it from. Just wanted to make sure that you guys got the full impact of that magnetic lid closing. The first thing that I want to bring up is that it has the same internal specs as the Anbernic R28XX. However, there are several other things that set it apart and make it a much better overall system in my opinion. For starters, the 28XX was extremely tiny. I know that some people are into those microsystems, but it's not really my thing. So as you can see here, the 28XX has identical specs, but a big difference is the screen size. So let's talk about the 3.5-inch IPS display on the 35XXSP. Before I get into the screen, I just want to say do yourself a favor and make sure you use RetroArch. Don't use the Anbernic emulators. They're not very optimized. So the screen is sharp, vibrant, and has a display resolution of 640 by 480. And if you opt to get the preloaded SD card, RetroArch will be set with the borders for the systems to make the screen resolution fit the proper aspect ratio. If not, it's something I definitely recommend you do once you get into the system and load your own games on there. But essentially, it's 3.5 inches of colorful glory in all of its sharpness. The display is beautiful and just the right size for most handheld gaming, ensuring that you will get an immersive visual experience. If you're familiar with the 28XX, which I previously reviewed, then you probably have a good idea of what the system is capable of as far as gaming. But I am going to make it a point to breeze through some of the systems that I know people are going to want to see, as well as some of the systems that aren't going to work as well as you would probably like. PSP seems to run smoothly in most cases. One of the biggest setbacks with the system setup is the lack of RAM, and by that I mean the 1 GB that it comes with. 2 GB is a bit more ideal for a setup like this, and 4 would be optimal. The main areas where you're going to see this affect games is just in stuttering or pauses that might randomly occur when you're playing certain games. PSP is one of those systems that runs relatively smoothly, but you will experience some of those stutters. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really buy this for PSP. It's more of the Game Boy Advance aesthetic and being able to play the entire Game Boy Advance library in a very bright, vibrant, and beautiful screen. Next, we've got Dreamcast. Dreamcast also runs pretty well for the most part, but you will experience from time to time some of that stuttering that I was talking about. I apologize for the screen washout here. I actually had to turn down the backlight so that the picture came through clear on the camera, but I can assure you that the screen is vibrant and beautiful. So overall, you shouldn't be having any issues playing the Dreamcast library as it stands. It's just a matter of flycast compatibility, which is almost everything. Next, we're going to get into PlayStation. And this is one that, across the board, usually doesn't give you any problems playing on almost any modern device. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We're just going to run through a little bit of quick gameplay and an FMV scene, and you guys can see for yourselves, it runs great. Also, they're using a more current version of RetroArch on this device than they were on the 28XX, which gives you more options when it comes to cores and your settings. This is also one of the big differences between the two devices. So again, totally stable frame rate on PlayStation emulation, no issues there at all. And if you're wondering about arcade systems, this plays most of the general arcade systems pretty well. Obviously, it's going to be able to handle anything that's related to FinalBurn, and it handles a lot of MAME titles really well too. So if you're worried about playing those Capcom Play System games, don't be, because they're going to play fine. Overall, some of the major titles that you may be missing here are going to be games like Killer Instinct 2. They still haven't quite optimized the MAME cores for those games on these platforms yet. And of course, games like Cruisin' USA, San Francisco Rush 2049. You're definitely going to need a bigger and better platform for those ones. Next up, we're going to look at Virtual Boy really quick, and you're not going to have any issues with this one. With the original 35XX, Virtual Boy actually didn't run very well, But with this hardware, it doesn't seem to have any issues. And Virtual Boy is kind of one of those hidden gems where there's a few games on it that are just really cool and fun to play. For example, Wario Land and Mario Clash. So Game Boy Advance runs absolutely perfect, as you would expect. And like I said, they have these borders set up already to make the aspect ratio of the screen match the original, and it looks so brilliant. I love it. And since this device is running a more current version of RetroArch, it gives you the option to use screen filters as well. Obviously, these screens are a little bit smaller, but you can get the dot matrix effect, which is also really cool. And since I haven't pointed it out yet, this device feels great in your hands. The buttons are nice, it has a good weight to it, it does not feel cheaply made by any means. And the battery easily lasts through multiple sessions of long plays. Any of the Sega systems from 32X down are going to run great. Sega Saturn is going to be a no-go, but obviously Dreamcast, as we've seen, has no issues. If you want to play Sega Saturn games the way that they were meant to be played, you're going to have to go with an RG556 or a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. A little bit more handheld emulation here. Neo Geo Pocket Color looks beautiful, the aspect ratio is great, and I love the borders. The games play without a hitch. Another thing that's nice about this version of RetroArch is that you can actually adjust the latency settings and other settings related to feedback and performance. Game Boy, need I say more? N64. Now this is one of the ones that I've seen people say, it runs great, it runs fine. It doesn't run great. It actually only runs about 40 frames per second, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, depending on the game that you're playing. But this system is not one that you're gonna wanna rely on N64 performance from. Yeah, if playing N64 games is like your primary thing, don't get this, because it's not gonna play them the way that you want it to. Sure, most of the games are, air quotes, playable, kind of, but when you're getting 40 frames per second, or you have to adjust the settings to 1 or 2 frame skip to get the performance out of it that you want to, it takes away from the original feel of playing the game. That's just my 2 cents. Some people might be okay with it, but I'm not. Alright, next up we have Nintendo DS, and I'm just gonna brush by this because there's no issues playing this. Obviously you're not gonna be able to play 3DS very well, if at all, but DS has no issues, no major issues that I caught at least. MAME will play most of the key games that I think people want to play pretty well. Most of those are going to be games like from 1996, 1997, and down. Now again, there are going to be a few games mixed in there from that era that you're not going to be able to play, like Cruisin' USA and Killer Instinct. But overall, for what this device is, it plays the games that you would want to play pretty darn good. I mean, I didn't experience any issues with any of the Mortal Kombats up to Ultimate, obviously, or with any of the other more basic systems that you would play. But generally speaking, anything that's CHD is usually going to be a pain in the butt to get working on a system like this, and it's probably not going to work anyways. Of course, SNES, NES, no issues there. So, what are my final thoughts on this thing? And what do I think the top 3 choices are? As far as the price point, the aesthetic, the controls, the screen, and what this thing is capable of doing, I think for $60 to $80, it's one of the best priced handhelds that Anbernic has made and that's out there right now to get the handheld gaming experience. And by the way, this was not, I repeat, not sent to me for a review. I actually got this on my own. If you're looking for something primarily for just handheld devices on emulation, this is definitely a good choice. So let's get into the top 3. And coming in at number 3 is the 35XXSP with solid hardware capability for its size, great buttons, a beautiful screen, and HDMI out amongst other functions. This is a great little device for the price point and should definitely be considered if you're looking for a budget device. In second place, the ARC-D with the RK35XXSP chipset and 2 GB of RAM. With that configuration, it runs about $10 to $20 more than the SP, and it is definitely worth it if you're looking for another budget entry-level device with a nice 6-button layout. And in first place for under $200 is the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, which will play almost anything that you throw at it. With today's options, it's hard not to justify spending $80 to $100 more on one of these so that you can just play everything, excluding Xbox, PS3, and whatever's above that, obviously.
F***ing bitch!
I know a lot of people like the 556, but it's a little bit overpriced in my opinion, even though it is a very nice device. With so many options, I think it's good to narrow them down, and these are just my opinions. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and thanks for watching.